David Sterling from Norwalk.
Thank you guys for having me here tonight. Appreciate y'all showing up. I'm honored to be here and honored to talk to you guys. Instead of wasting a lot of your time tonight talking about my background and experience, I will tell you that I've been practicing law for about 15 years now. Got my law degree from ULR School of Law. Grew up in Texarkana before moving to Little Rock to get my undergraduate and graduate degree in public administration. But I've been in private practice now for about 15 years now. I've been rated preeminent by my peers for my legal ability and ethics and so forth. So I've got a lot of private practice experience, and I hope to kind of bring that to the Attorney General's office. But you can find out a whole lot more about me. I've got some push cards out here that has a little bit of information. On there you'll find the link to my website, which is www.sterling4ag.com, sterling4ag.com. You can look at my background, experience, my stances on various issues, some of which I'll talk to you a little bit about tonight and everything, but I encourage you to go there and check me out. It's going to be, I think it's a new era in Arkansas. We just now elected our first majority Republican in the House and the Senate for the first time in 138 years in either house, and we did it in both. But I hope we can kind of keep building on what we've done so far, and we need a strong conservative in the AG's office to try to defend some of these laws that are being passed by a conservative legislature. A lot of people ask me, why do I want to be Attorney General? And I tell them that, like you, I've become concerned with how powerful the federal government has become year after year. And I think that the greatest challenge facing all Arkansans is a federal government that is slowly creeping in on state authority and individual liberties. And as Attorney General, my top priority would be to defend the Constitution and to protect the liberty of all Arkansans from an overreaching federal government. When I take the oath of office, I'm going to swear to support the Constitution. And in my mind, what that means is supporting our system of federalism, embodied in the 10th Amendment, that basically limits the power of the federal government in Washington, D.C., and grants broad authority to states like Arkansas and individuals like you. I feel that the Attorney General's office is the best defense against an overreaching federal government. And as your Attorney General, I'm going to fight to protect your right to choose your own doctor. Despite provisions of Obamacare that are going to seek to limit that right. I'm going to fight to protect your right and the rights of all Arkansans to work without being forced to join a labor union. I'm going to fight to protect farmers and ranchers and landowners throughout the state of Arkansas from an out-of-control EPA that seems to be trying to do through regulations and through executive orders what the Obama administration and what Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi can't seem to get through Congress. I want to fight to protect the sanctity of life. I applaud the legislature in this past session. They passed some really good pro-life bills. They passed them with our first majority Republican in the House and Senate. Of course, Governor Beebe came in and vetoed them, and the House came back and the Senate came back, and they overrode those vetoes. So now those are actually the law of the land. And this isn't the first time that those bills have been introduced in Arkansas. They were introduced in the 2011 session as well, and in that session, Dustin McDaniel testified in committee that they are unconstitutional. Well, now they're actually the law of the land in Arkansas, and he's having to go into court and argue that they are constitutional, even though he testified they were unconstitutional. Well, I'm very pro-life. I believe life begins at conception, and I think that these bills will save untold numbers of lives. And it'd be my honor to be in the Attorney General's office defending these kind of laws. I'll fight to protect traditional marriage. In 2004, the voters of Arkansas spoke. 75% of the people that voted in that election that year voted to define marriage as between one man and one woman. And they didn't just vote to define it as a law, but they actually amended our state constitution to define it that way. Well, with the Supreme Court rulings that came down about 2 weeks ago, where the Defense of Marriage Act, was struck down, Section 3 of that law was struck down as being unconstitutional. Basically, they said that the federal government can't make a distinction between a lawfully married couple in a state that recognizes same-sex marriages like New York, the federal government can't come in and treat them differently. Well, they did rule on Section 2 of the Defense of Marriage Act, which says that states like Arkansas that have a specific definition of marriage, that they don't have to recognize this marriage from New York. And what's happening right now, this week, there was, actually I think it was on Friday, there was a lawsuit filed challenging, Arkansas's definition of marriage embodied in the Constitution. And again, I believe in traditional marriage. And this is more than just a traditional marriage concept. This is about religious liberties. I can tell you a story. There was a florist in Washington State that was asked to decorate for a wedding, and she inquired into more details about the wedding, found out that it was a same-sex wedding, and she said, you know what, this is against my religious beliefs. I can't, in good faith, decorate for your wedding. Please find another florist. Well, that couple and the Attorney General of the state of Washington is actually suing that florist now for unlawful discrimination. This is based on her religious freedom. Where is our religious freedom gone in this country? Whenever you have the Attorney General of a state suing an individual business owner. I mean, you're talking about economic freedom, you're talking about religious freedom. And we need an Attorney General in this state, not like what they've got in Washington State, but you need an Attorney General that does believe in economic freedom and does believe in religious freedom, and that's what I present to you. I'll fight for your right to keep and bear arms. I think the Second Amendment, there's no ambiguity in the Second Amendment. I think that the Second Amendment is very, very critical to our Constitution. And, and you see the Obama administration, you see Congress trying to enact laws right now that are going to seek to restrict our right to keep and bear arms. And a lot of people say, well, we need some reasonable measures. Well, I'll tell you that, the administration never misses an opportunity when a crisis occurs, they always see that crisis as an opportunity to make some inroads in on the Second Amendment. Not a single thing that they introduced in Congress, trying to get it through Congress, would have done anything to prevent that tragedy in Sandy Hook or in Aurora, Colorado. In both of those instances, all the measures that were put in place. I mean, when you look at what happened in Connecticut, you basically had lawfully obtained firearms. The person that committed that crime, he failed the background check and couldn't get any arms. And those are the kind of things that they're trying to implement nationwide through Congress. And they wouldn't have prevented that in Connecticut, and they won't prevent them on a national scale. But the people on the left don't seem to care, because I don't think that they really respect the Second Amendment like we do. And so, again, I think that the Second Amendment is very critical to our Constitution. I think the 10th Amendment is very critical to our Constitution in drawing a distinction between state and federal authority. And I'll fight, as your Attorney General, I'll sue the federal government if necessary on these and every other important issue of the day. Again, I'm David Sterling. I'm running for Arkansas Attorney General. I encourage you to go to my website at sterlingforag.com, find out more about me, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you throughout the next, I think we've got about 15 months left in this campaign. Thank you very much.
How about a question or two for David? Anybody got questions they'd like to ask you, Joe?
Tell us about the Federalist Society that you say you're in.
Well, the Federalist Society believes in original intent. It's a group that really does believe in the concept of federalism, which is the division between state and federal authority.
Is it do y'all meet for coffee and cake, or do you discuss the Federalist Papers, or what do y'all do?
Well, the Federalist Papers are an essential part of it. There's not a local chapter here in Arkansas. There was a few years ago when I was in law school, and there's been some efforts to kind of reconstitute it here locally and everything, but right now it's mostly kind of a think tank that's based in Washington, D.C. They provide a law review called, I think it's Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy, and it basically presents a original intent type of slant on a lot of the issues of the day. So a lot of really kind of deep thought, well thought out perspectives that aren't really heard about a whole lot in mainstream media and so forth.
Patrick?
There was a legal case, the Supreme Court, I'm not familiar with all the details, but with the California Prop 8, they basically threw it out on the basis that the litigators didn't have standing. In other words, the people are just screwed if their representatives don't go to bat for them. We have no other option but to just take what's basically shoved down our throats. As an attorney general, how open are you to the common man to come and say, I've got a problem and nobody's going to deal with it? Or do I have to go to a representative? Does he have to do it? Or, how does a small man in this state get legal protection?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, and something I didn't expound on just a moment ago, but let me explain to the crowd here what he's talking about. In the Prop 8 case, basically you had a few mayors in California that decided to start allowing same-sex marriages in their state. And so you had, in Arkansas, we have what's called an initiated act, where the citizens can get a certain number of signatures and get an actual act on the ballot. We can, citizen enacted laws, basically. California has the same sort of thing. We also have referendum, where we refer it to voters and then y'all vote on it. But at the same time, we've got this initiated act concept as well. So allows for grassroots initiated laws. And in California, through initiated act, the voters in California voted by a strong majority to define marriages between one man and one woman, basically outlawing gay marriage in California. Well, some couples there decided to challenge that law and filed a lawsuit saying that it was unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution. And the Attorney General, Jerry Brown at the time, decided he wasn't going to defend that law on behalf of the citizens who enacted a citizen-enacted law. Well, to me, that's a dereliction of duty, because his job as Attorney General of the state of California is to defend the laws of the state of California, whether they came from the legislature or whether they were citizen-initiated. And so what happened was he didn't defend it, so they lost, and then there was a group of citizens that came together to fund the appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said that group of people that funded that appeal didn't have standing to be in court in the first place. So the citizens didn't have, what recourse do they have whenever their own Attorney General and their own governor won't defend that law? The same thing happened when it came to the Defense of Marriage Act. That was kind of a little bit different in the sense that they got a little bit further along the appeal process before Eric Holder decided as United States Attorney General not to defend the act. And you see what happened. You had a Supreme Court that basically said that it was unconstitutional, but you had an Attorney General's office in the United States that didn't defend U.S. laws. And so I think it's very, very critical that you have someone in the Attorney General's office that's willing to fight, whether it's an individual citizen or if it's a collective citizens, to defend laws of the state of Arkansas. Otherwise, we'll be on the same course as California.
And you'll do that?
Absolutely. It's my job, and I'll do it with passion.
Sam?
Does the Attorney General's office of the state have any provisions for having any instructional courses or classes for junior high school, and college students as to the laws and the Constitution and things like that? But I hear coming out of their mouths some of the most ridiculous stuff I've ever heard. They're not getting it at home. I'm just wondering if the schools teach them anything about it. And I'll bet you my Hummer is going out there and stop the next 20 people at that stop of any age, that 19 of them will miss this question. What is the Second Amendment for? What is it and what's it for? Most of them probably know, it's the right to bear arms. Okay. What for? Well, that's to protect the First Amendment. Wrong answer. It's to protect the people from the country taking all the amendments away from the tyrannical government. They just don't know. Now, I'm just wondering if you all have any provisions for free speech, is that? But you haven't got free speech. If the government's going to take the guns away, they'll bear arms. They don't realize even what's in our founding fathers' documents. Do y'all do any instructions or have any courses? I know some universities get on some kicks and they put out lots of data and have seminars and stuff like that, and speakers and go to some schools. Can y'all do that?
Now, I'm not the Attorney General yet, I don't work for the
Well, no, but I
Attorney
mean,
General's office.
you know what's in the office, you know what's going on there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that we don't have civics as, taught in our public schools like they have in the past. When I grew up, I mean, we had a whole year of civics. You learned about American government and so forth. From what I understand now, it's like a 6-week course, just a mini course, and that's pretty much all kids get, in their junior high and high school education. And I think it's very critical that we not only teach it, but we actually teach some of these things in depth.
Bill?
Let me, I want to be sure that I understood you. It's always bothered me that citizens initiate some act, and they spend a lot of time getting signatures, they get all this and take it to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General says, well, this is incorrect, we have to throw it out, you have so many days to go back through this whole process again. It seems to me that the Attorney General works for all of us, and so he's working with the folks that are trying to get the thing put together. So why, and is this what you're saying? When this person comes and says, I'm Bob Newbold, and I'm thinking about initiating an act here, will this title work? Is this wording correct before I go out here and spend months trying to collect all these signatures? And you say, yeah, this is good, change that, and away you go, right? And you do that up front rather than going through all this business of later on, telling them you got to start all over again.
Well, I think that that's what you have right now, but the problem is, I don't think that citizens are necessarily getting the guidance that they need as they go through the process. I think that you have some folks in the AG's office. I think it's very critical that the folks in the AG's office approve it before you go out and spend all this time collecting the signatures and that sort of thing, because you don't want to get all the way down that road and then have it overturned because it was a confusing ballot title. But I think that's what's critical is that the AG's office needs to lend some support to folks, on the front end, instead of saying, this is too confusing, go out and try again. I mean, all the while your clock is running. I mean, I think it's important that the folks in the AG's office actually help with that process.
I think what Bill's trying to say, like proofreading,
Yeah.
correct.
Any more questions? We got another speaker coming. Dorrance, did you wave a hand? No? Yes, here's one.
On religious freedom. Obama is exporting religious freedom and taking it using it as an opportunity to trying to get Americans to embrace Islam. It's obvious, some of the things that he's done. Oklahoma tried to pass a Save Our State law that specifically mentions Sharia law. It was struck down. HB 1065 was struck, or 755, I'm sorry, was struck down. They passed 1065, took Sharia law out of it, and passed it. What would be the role of the AG in Arkansas as far as getting something like that in Arkansas, and what would be your position as far as keeping Sharia law and foreign laws out of, keeping them from being considered in Arkansas courts?
Let me try to understand your question. You're saying in Oklahoma they've tried to restrict,
They tried to prevent the introduction of Sharia law into Oklahoma, and it was, what was the court struck it down?
It was the higher court struck it down. They were struck down in two places, 755, HB 755, because it specifically mentioned Sharia law, keeping it from being considered in their courts. 1065, they came back and took Sharia law out of it, just called it foreign law, although they did add an amendment that said that if you choose to recognize a foreign law, businesses could, but individuals couldn't. I'm really interested in keeping foreign laws, i.e. Sharia laws, from being considered in Arkansas courts. Where does the AG come in on that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with what's going on in Oklahoma on that, but I will definitely take a look at that. I mean, I'm a very strong proponent for religious liberty, and I believe that, one thing that happens in the United States, I think a lot of times is, the First Amendment has the freedom of religion, but it's got two parts to it. One is the non-establishment clause, and the other is the free exercise clause. And I think a lot of times, we basically tamp down on the free exercise clause, and we don't allow Christians to freely exercise our religion, in this country, because we're so concerned about, the anti-establishment clause, not endorsing one religion over the other. I think that sometimes you gotta have the right balance there, and I don't think that we've necessarily had the right balance over the years. I think there should be a freedom to express your religion, whether it's Christian or whatever, but there has to be that right balance, and I think that that's what you're seeing.
Well, I agree with you in religious freedom, but Sharia law is in direct conflict with any constitution in the United States because there's no separation between church and state. You don't get to choose. It's violent against women. Obama has these liberals in lockstep behind him and embracing this thing, and they don't even know what they're embracing. It's violent and oppressive to homosexuals and women in particular, and they don't even know what they're embracing. But that's one thing that's really important to me is keeping that out of our court system.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'll give you a good example of how bad it is. Under Sharia law, in order for a woman to be, if a woman's raped, for it to be raped, there has to be at least 2 witnesses. There's an actual case where an Australian woman recently went to Dubai, was raped by 4 men over a 24-hour period. When she reported it to the police, she was thrown in jail for 7 months for having illicit sex before she was then deported, simply because there wasn't 2 witnesses to the fact that she was raped, and that's under Sharia law.
All right, let's go on. David Sterling, look him up. Tomorrow morning, he's going to be at Q&A at Bill Vines' Holiday Inn. You'll get to hear some more of David. We'll probably have him back in 15 months. We'll try to have him back too. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joey.
I want to talk to you briefly about this Blueway program. It's something that I got involved with through Jeannie Burlsworth at Secure Arkansas. Jeannie and I have, this last session, we spent a lot of time down at Little Rock fighting for conservative issues, and got to know Brian King. And we heard it said a minute ago, you got to walk the walk. We hear a lot of talking, but sometimes we see a lot of walking when the rubber meets the road. And I want to say that I'm not here to make a campaign pitch for Brian, but I'll tell you one thing: if I'm going to battle, and I'm going to battle on conservative principles, I want that man right next to me. I mean, he under immense pressure. I saw conservative after, and I won't say Republican or Democrat, because to me, it's not about Republican or Democrat. I mean, I'm tired of the Republican Party, and I'm tired of the Democratic Party, and I want somebody who stands on values, somebody who stands on principles, somebody who has a base, a core base, that they know what conservative is. They know what the Second Amendment says. They know what the Seventh Amendment says, and they're willing to take a stand on it, even if it's in their economic not in their economic best interest, because it's about where we stand. Politician after politician is just not getting the job done. We see it here locally. I mean, where are our local politicians not? Okay, that's my rant, I guess, for a minute. John Adams said that property must be secured or liberty cannot exist. George Washington said private property and freedom are inseparable. And I believe that. And Thomas, you touched on that. And life, liberty, and property. Jeannie Burlsworth says taxes and property. And we better be watching what they're doing on both of them. Then the first thing you know, we've got this Blueway project. And the problem is, it's not the first time. Back in 1996, I know many of you know that it was the man in the biosphere. And I know that then Governor Huckabee took a stand against that program, and the citizens stood up for their rights, and the citizens stopped it. Those if you read the paper today, those dadgum paranoid citizens out there. That's what the Southwest Times calls people who don't want the federal government taking any more control of our lives. We're now paranoid. Well, I think you just need to look at the facts. And in 1996, after the citizens stood up and revolted and said, look, federal government, you're not going to come in and control our property. We think we as local citizens can control our own property. One of the think tank liberal type groups said, Ozark citizen, and this is, I guess it was some kind of sad, Ozark citizens have a distinct individual and cultural identity linked to place. They believe themselves to be independent and more capable of managing natural resources on an individual basis without outside intervention. Well, amen. And I think, you know, that the federal government just can't understand why when they want to come in and create the this Blueway program and nominate and designate and ultimately control 1/3 of our property, and they think that we don't think that that's going to affect individual property rights. I mean, who are they fooling? I mean, and we're called foolish in the newspaper for saying, look, yeah, we believe in conservation, but we believe we can do it locally. And conservatives believe that, you know, we can run our schools on a local basis, keep out of our hair, federal government. You know, we can do all these things and do it better than the federal government coming in here and ultimately taking over our land. I mean, we know it's not conservation, it's desperation, and we all know who are thinking and who are reading where it's headed. But Sebastian County, I got involved with Jeannie, and I told Jeannie, well, I'll do whatever I can do. So I went to the quorum court. Danny helped me out in that regard and got before the quorum court, and they embraced the resolution. So we were one of the 21 resolutions that brought public attention to what was going on. And then Senator Bozeman stepped up and talked about issues, including the fact that, you know, they don't need Obama. This is part of Obama's Great Outdoors Initiative. I mean, that's where it starts. That's number one. Then they nominate, then they designate, and then they get all this alignment going. So we've got to stop it. And is it over? Yeah, they say a few days back, well, it's over. Well, it's not. It's never going to be over. It's over because we brought public attention to it. But, you know, the newspaper should recognize that, you know, well, if they're really doing what's right here, then why don't the feds bring it back and let's have some hearings on it. Let's see what the people, because they don't want due process. They just want to come in and take our property. And we've got to be careful about that. I mean, eminent domain and all those types of things. And I promised several people tonight that I wouldn't get on my right to trial by jury soapbox, but I know many of you would be disappointed if I didn't. But, you know, that's one of those amendments that we better think about what we're doing when we're taking away the right to trial by jury, number 7. Because if we don't have number 7, with all due respect, Mr. Former politician and Mr. Politician, I trust the neighbor. I trust my neighbor more than I trust a politician. And I trust the community. And those are the people that I want deciding my fate, not the government. I want government out of my life. So with all the pressure that's been applied, they withdrew the Blueway designation happily. But I think we've got to keep the pressure on them. And I think Jeannie Burlsworth would tell you the same thing. I know Jeannie just keeps digging and digging and digging and finding and finding and finding, and she found another memorandum of understanding. And you know, I've heard my dad talk for years about. My dad's out doing when other people are saying, and he's out pissing off the world when other people are in the closet, you know, saying things about immigration and what it's going to do to this country. He was out putting up billboards on I-40 talking about while the behemoth sleeps, unbridled immigration, you know, is taking us over. And now we're seeing it. And we're seeing it just like we did years before. But we've got to stand up, and we've got to be accounted for. And I know that most people are out here trying to earn a living and you just can't keep up with these rascals. I mean, it's just one thing after the next. But, you know, what Jeannie finds is, you know, this UN. I mean, is this something that's coming from the UN? Well, I don't know if it's not, but if it is or not, but it you know, when you start reading and you start reading about, and I would encourage some of you or whoever to read about the Ramsar Convention of Wetlands, which is an international body on conservation, and they've made the watersheds, which are listed in the Ramsar Convention on wetlands of international importance. Well, guess what's on there? Well, the White River in Arkansas is on there, and the first designation is the Connecticut River, which was the first designation. And so, you just start putting the pieces together, and you know, you can, it's great outdoors, and you know, Obama's great outdoors, and you know, I think we've just got to be vigilant. I think we've got to keep on them, and we can't let our guard down, and we've got to keep pushing and It's just like you say. I mean, I was disappointed by Steve Womack's, you know, what he did on this. He didn't take any leadership. I believe that John Bozeman did, but we've got to let the folks know they're working for us, and we're not going to re-elect folks that don't stand on conservative principles. And I was trying to see if there's any other, but I think the main thing is there was just no process. I mean, they think they can come in and go to Little Rock on January whatever and say, we've designated this as we've made a designation of 1/3 of your land, and think that we're just gonna sit back and take it. And I praise the folks who got out in front of this, like Jeannie Burlsworth, worked night and day and got all these quorum courts. I thank the quorum court members for working hard, and the county judges, and saying, look, we've got to have local control. So with that said, I don't know that I can answer all your questions. I mean, I'm just getting in on the front of this myself, but just trying to do as much educating as possible.
Sam?
We're just talking about Arkansas now. Now, I think what this is systemic, the whole United States.
Right.
And they got map plans for the whole banana, not just our interest. It's much larger than people think.
No, you're so right. I know the Western Caucus out in Wyoming. I mean, they've been very active, and it's there. I mean, it's Missouri, and those, I know the senators up there played they jumped and they said it's not happening here.
Joy, you hit something a while ago. Take local control. We don't have local control of anything anymore. Anytime the feds put money into our schools, we don't have any control of schools anymore. So this is just the first step. In 10 years, most of us will be dead, and they'll bring it up again and run it through again.
That's why we need education. That's why we got to educate our own and make sure that.
Question, Bill?
Right, no, you have to count me among the paranoid, because Lennon and Marx said you control property rights and health, and you control the country. Now, people don't speak up, they didn't speak up. Of course, they probably couldn't, but we could still. And with property rights and health, and if you control that, which they're getting there, we're trying to.
But we need to be doing it every day, Bill. It's something that we can't just do every day and then. Warren?
Agenda 21 was a prelim to this, what's happening right now here. And that was the UN and the whole works combined. You remember when they wanted to make that highway in West Virginia back into the country and give them a good road because they were having trouble getting back in there? The first thing after the government got a hold of it and started funding it, they started condemning property because they wanted a scenic view and they wanted to condemn people's homes. Well, this is wrong. Look what happened up in Klamath Falls, Oregon. When the veterans come home from World War II, they went up there, they gave them property. They said, you'll have water, you'll have farms, and you'll have it all. Well, the first thing they tried to do was, they tried to go up there and condemn, they didn't condemn it, they just told the farmers that they couldn't have any water anymore because the sucker fish, which they tried to eradicate the year before, needed the water. And the American Eagle too was included in that, but you don't take that much water if you've ever been up there and seen that lake up there. So this is what happened. Then they went to California, the UN come in and said that we had abused our privileges, so we were gonna put meters on wells in California, that you couldn't drill wells. That was the government and them working together. That was Clinton. Clinton signed that Agenda 21 in '93. He also made 10 monuments at the same time, and one of them was in Utah, which has got the cleanest burning coal in the whole world. Next to Indonesia is the only place else you can get it, and made a monument out of it. Well, the people were bad about it, and Bush was supposed to do something about it when he got in there, but he didn't do nothing. So this is just a 21.
He's part of the problem. I mean,
Well,
Bush
this
was part of the
blue-
problem also.
This blue water is just a step off of what Agenda 21 was already doing.
All
And
right, let me go over here right quick, Warren, thank you. Patrick?
Just quickly, your message is well taken here, but to an extent, you preach it to the choir.
Oh, I
It's my considered opinion that the bulk of this nation has gone from an attitude of give me liberty or give me death to one of, yeah, whatever. So what's plan B? I mean, you can preach all you want to and people just don't give a damn. And the government's going to come in and find one way or another to take over. Okay, so what's plan B?
What's plan B from my point of view?
Yes.
We better get off our asses and do something. I mean, we better be down at the legislatures. We better be an involved public, and we're not. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. We're not, and it's most folks haven't heard of the Blue Way. Most folks have no idea what the Blue Way is. Most folks don't know what a lot of these issues are.
Mm-hmm.
Most folks don't know the 7th from anything other than the 2nd, because most people seem to know what the 2nd is, but it's just, we're just not informed. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but my roots continually challenge me to get off my butt and do something and take a stand and show some courage and I think we've got to support people like Brian King who do the right thing and who say they're going to run on conservative principles and then get down there and vote conservatively and understand that in private option, there's a rat in the woodshed somewhere and not take the easy way out. But that's a long way to say I don't know what.
Let me tell you, okay, David, go
I
ahead.
just want to say that, I want to second what Joey was saying, but I think Plan B is, getting motivated out there, because I think you're right. A lot of people are not, motivated. They're very apathetic in this country, and a lot of people aren't going to vote, and a lot of people aren't, going to be motivated enough to go out and vote in a primary. The turnout for primaries is very, very low. So I think we have an opportunity, as a vocal and very interested group to actually affect elections, and particularly in the primary elections as well as in the general elections, because you guys are motivated. I'm motivated. Everyone in this room is motivated. So all we got to do is just, like Joey said, get off our butts and get out there and get other people motivated. If we get to the polls, shame on y'all if you hadn't voted in recent elections or whatever, because that's where the rubber meets the road. If y'all are concerned about this, then we all need to get to the polls, and we need to get our friends to the polls, and we need to get our relatives to the polls, and we can really affect change. But, Joey can talk till he's blue in the face, but if we don't go to the polls and actually vote, then we're just wasting our time.
Anyhow, Paul's going to talk about this petition to put the private option on the ballot in November 14th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Paul, tell them your name.
My name is Paul Phaneuf, and because I would like you to be able to pay attention to me and actually hear me out, I would like to explain my speech impediment. It sounds amazingly like a northeastern accent. I am, in fact, from Rhode Island. I have been an activist for 40-plus years. I moved out here to be with my family. I have 10 native-born Arkansan grandchildren, 1 native-born Arkansan great-grandchild. Both of my daughters have lived here for 25 years. My brother and my sister have lived here for 35 years. All of their children and grandchildren are native Arkansans. So my roots run deep here, but they're not necessarily because I've been standing here. So I actually, because I have my children and grandchildren here, I care about Arkansas a lot. And the first thing that I did when I came out was I got very involved, as I had been in Rhode Island, with the entire Patriot movement and our desire to protect liberty. Now, some of you were probably expecting Glenn Gallus, and I want to apologize because it's only me. And expecting Glenn and getting me is kind of like hoping to see the President of the United States, not current one, but perhaps Reagan, and getting stuck with the Undersecretary of the Interior to the island of Guam. But nevertheless, I'm here and I will do my best. Now, you're all familiar with the fact that this referendum and this petition is going by. Is there anyone who's not aware of that? Okay, good. What I'd like to do is go through some very quick fundamentals about the petition, and that way there you'll know how to go about getting the signatures. And I've heard that you folks have some experience with this, so I'm probably going to be reviewing some details that you're familiar with. Here they are. One is you need to have a separate booklet, and if you'll look at the back of these, each one of them has a booklet. There has to be a separate booklet with each page of the petition. So you can't just get the petition signed without having the booklet attached. You will be provided with both. The second thing is that you can only have registered voters sign the petition. There is one county, and obviously they have to be from the county that you're getting signed, but if you'll look at the top of the petition, you'll get a copy, but right at the top, it says the name of the county. So all the folks that sign on this particular page have to be from this county. You need to make sure that it's legible. So you need to just outright ask people, can you please make sure that we can read this? Because the signatures need to be confirmed or they'll be thrown out. So the printout and the signature, now nobody has a legible signature because we all want to be doctors, but the reality is that at least the name must be printed legibly. They have to sign the petition the same way that their voter registration card has their name. So whatever their voter registration card says is the way they need to sign it. If you happen to encounter somebody who has a disability and they can't fill the entire thing out, you can fill out the information for them, but they have to print and sign their own name. If somebody, and this has been fairly common, somebody will be signing it and they'll make a mistake in their phone number or their birth date or any one of the items on here, and they'll cross it out and go to correct it. That's not acceptable when the signatures are counted. If somebody makes an error on any one point, you cross out the entire line and you have them start over. This is very important. When we are asking people to sign the petition, we are acting as witnesses. So we sign it at the bottom, and we're stating that we witnessed the signature. So you can't come to a room like this and pass it out and ask it to go about and have people signing it unless you're literally following the petition from person to person. You cannot sign the petition that you are the witness to. So you have to sign somebody else's petition. And the last thing is that we recommend that you get a legal-sized clipboard to make it easy for people to sign. If you look at the back and you look at the signature, you'll see a whole bunch of the instructions. There's a few things that I've mentioned that aren't on there, but I'll send you an email with this list of 10 things, so that if anybody has questions, you can answer them. And there's information, and that's why you have to attach one of these to every one of these petition sheets, because the law requires that all of this information accompany each one of the petition sheets. So it's important that we do it correctly, or the signatures won't count. Now, that's the information that I have on the petition. If I may, I'd like to make a couple of comments. One, Thomas Paine once wrote that it is the duty of the citizen to protect his country from its government. It is our duty to protect our country from the government. Our government, as we are all aware, is no longer benign. It is the enemy of liberty. And as I mentioned, I moved out here because I wanted to be with my grandchildren. This government is so far over the edge that I have to tell you, if I didn't have grandchildren, I think I'd just go find myself a cabin in the woods, hunt some deer on the king's land, and live off the land and disappear until I went home to be with the Lord. However, I don't have that option, because when my children become my age, if I am not an activist and pouring out not my blood, the founders poured that, but my sweat and my tears, if I'm not willing to do that for their future, they will curse my name. And I will not have that happen. There was a well-known theologian, an apologist for the Christian faith. You may have heard his name. It's Francis Schaeffer. In the 70s, he spoke to the condition in which we would eventually find ourselves if we abandoned our dependence on God Almighty. And if you'll recall, the founders put it in the Declaration of Independence that our unalienable rights, and the word unalienable means it cannot be separated from you without destroying the fabric of your being. Unalienable rights are as much a part of us as our brain, our mind, our intellect, our emotions, our faith. They are a part of what God made us. So, Schaeffer said that if we abandoned that, which we have, that we would come and become, as a society, we would come to the point of despair. That speaks, sir, to what you mentioned, gentleman right there, where you were talking. We, as a nation, have reached a point of despair. This is the enemy of liberty's friend. We cannot allow ourselves to remain in a mental framework of despair. We must be resolved, the way the founding fathers were, that our children will be free. So help us God. I get passionate about it because I can't stand the thought of what my children are going to be living like if we don't do what we have to do.
That's right.
King Obama would like us to believe that resistance is futile. Resistance is not futile. It is the essence, the key to victory. We must resist. There's a maxim of law that says that silence is assent. What it means is that if you don't speak up when you are violated, what you're basically saying is it's okay with me. So silence is not an acceptable response. Being loud and in your face with those whom we have elected to serve, not rule, is what we must do. Throughout the last legislative session, my brother and I went on our time and our dime 2 days every week to Little Rock. and we confronted our legislators and senators on a regular basis, letting them know that we were watching every vote, and it makes a difference. Time is of the essence. We have a fixed amount of time in which we can submit this where it will do any good at all. So I pray, I urge you to take a copy of this, multiple copies. Take your time and your sweat and your tears and your sacrifice and get this filled up. This petition is important for those of us in Arkansas. But in my opinion, this has national consequences. Because if we, the people of Arkansas, can say no more, we say no, you can't do this to us. Let the other 49 states, or 56 other states, if King Obama is correct, let the other 49 states see that we have taken action, that we have stood our ground, that we have declared that we are a free people, that we are not the servants of government, that the government is our servant. It's time for the inversion to go back to the way the founders wanted it. That they who are elected serve, they do not rule. And that's our job. And if we don't do it, no one will. So let me encourage you. Make a difference. Take a stand. Spend some time. Make the sacrifice. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You folks are here. It's all the people that aren't here that we need to reach. But you know what? The petition's another opportunity. So that being said, unless you have any questions, yes, sir.
One thing you did not answer is, what do I do when I get all the signatures? What do I do with this?
Whomever you got them from, return them to them. So if you got them from Bob, then you'll return them to Bob.
Okay.
And if you want, right now, while you got it in front of you, go ahead and write my phone number on it.
Write it down on something else.
And write it on the...
Yeah. Let's keep anything.
What was your name
again? My name is Paul Phaneuf.
Paul
Phaneuf.
Yes, sir.
Spelled just like it sounds.
Phantom.
Yeah.
Are you saying this in effect against Obamacare?
Yes, it is dealing directly with the private option. And it's saying, let the voters of Arkansas decide. That's what it's saying.
Yes.
When do you need to have this turned in?
Yeah, we have less than 30 or 40 days.
Just 30 days.
Yeah.
I think it's 14.
So 15 days.
Yeah, so you'll get additional information as this goes along. Right now, this is just to get you going, and you've got to start, and you've got the basic rules that you need to follow so that we don't have signatures disqualified.
Yeah. Yes, Scott.
Yes, sir.
10 words or less, what is the purpose for this?
It is to allow the voters of Arkansas, it's a referendum, and the voters of Arkansas will be able to decide whether or not we want the private option.
And the private option means we're going to, I think you can explain that too, but I think it says we're going to add 250,000 people. We're going to buy 250,000 people medical insurance.
That's what they estimate. I think
Yeah,
that they've actually
it'll probably be
upped that.
400,000 for its
Up
own.
that since the session when they talk about the kids and a lot of other, so it's actually more than that. Figures.
Are we talking about Obamacare?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Arkansas's version of it.
The act, you can copy the act.
Oh, hold on a minute, let's go in order. Frank, come in.
I'll bet you 75% of Sebastian County opposes this expansion of Obamacare. We have 3 representatives and 2 senators from this around here. And I'll bet they each got 100+ emails and was told personally, do not support this. And the bunch we sent to Little Rock voted for it. Now, that's what the people of Fort Smith got.
Let me say something, if I may. This is a personal opinion. But I'm not an apologist for those who voted for Obamacare or for the private option. But for what it's worth, so that we can properly identify our adversary, every one of our legislators was basically told there are 2 piles of manure. By all means, taste them both and choose one. And that's the feds that did that. The feds put our people, our representatives, and again, I'm not making excuses for them, but they put them into a completely untenable position. I mean, you're going to be executed. Which would you prefer? Hanging or a firing squad? That's what they did to us. It's unacceptable.
Statewide, how many total signatures do you need?
They're shooting for 60,000. I believe the required number was 47,000.
47, 48.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Here's how many signatures we need. As many as each of you can individually get.
But one thing that's important that you can't emphasize enough is that each county has to be, it has to be signed on a different thing. Don't let them mix the counties on the.
Yep, that's very important. As I indicated, you write the county here, only the county that's at the top here signs it. You have a separate page for each county.
Yes.
You cannot sign your own.
That's
right.
You cannot sign your own. You have to sign somebody else's.
And how long do you have? I forgot.
Well, about the 14th of August, I think, is the cutoff date. We need to get them to San Galvin.
It's the first thing I've heard of this, so it's been going on a while.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
2 weeks.
Well, we heard it over and over in the legislative session where they were kicking so many of these out. It was phenomenal. I mean, they were trying to make the argument because they were basically trying to make it tougher. And I know Brian was on that committee, but it just seemed like every time we turned around, somebody was wanting to increase the number of signatures that you needed for making it tougher on the citizens.
Yeah, and I think some of that came from, you had some people turning petitions and there was a lot of fraudulent signatures, and I mean, there were some different things on verification. And, the one thing we want to make sure is just like the photo ID that when they're turning in signatures, and it's the same old thing. You have the good people trying to do the right things, get signatures, but this last time, if you noticed with the casino measure and some other things, they were having a lot of fraudulent unbelievable amounts. Not a small percentage, but some of the sheets, that were just, it was just terrible. So that, when that happens, sometimes you got to step up and look at some things.
You mentioned Obamacare. I don't think people realize that a lot of people don't pay attention to it. If you're 65 or up, I'm in my 70s, you better pay very close attention to it. Because what's happening to you, they don't want us around. We're expensive, we're too old, we're too conservative. And I take my prescriptions. I have Medicare, A, B, TRICARE for life, the whole banana. And the co-pays on my drug prescriptions each month are almost $600 after all things are paid. Now, I can afford it, but a lot of people out there can't. And it's going to get to a point to where there's going to be a real day of reckoning. And what they're going to do is going to keep squeezing and keep squeezing and keep squeezing because they want us gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's called political, manipulative euthanasia.
All right. We're about out of time. Any more questions for Paul?
I have one.
Yes.
We need messengers so badly, and tonight I've heard 3 or 4 great people with good messages. We just need to get that message out to the people. All the media is opposed to us, so we need messengers. Joey, David, you, and others have been great tonight, and I appreciate what you're doing.